Hey guys, and welcome to another Leadfeeder webinar. First of all, before we start this one today, anybody that was on the webinar last Friday, I'd just like to apologize. We had some technical issues, hence why we're running through the content again today. And myself and Aaron were speaking about it the other day again, but it's actually good to have been able to have a practice run through last week, and then this week we're able to do the real show. So you guys are probably luckier than the guys last week in that respect.
Definitely.
So let me just start by introducing Aaron. So people that don't know Aaron is the founder of a company called Predictable Revenue. And something that Aaron, I've seen a lot of, I've gotten a lot of inspiration from Aaron in the past is from his book Predictable Revenue, which he penned right after he finished up with Salesforce. Aaron was with Salesforce during the time when they rose from 10 million in revenue up to 100 million in revenue. And during that time, he was running the BDR function there, basing things off of a very data-driven approach in terms of what type of email outbound cadence will work within that BDR function, as well as any type of outreach function, any type of outreach cadence they were doing. And as I said, this Predictable Revenue book is known as the sales Bible of Silicon Valley, and it was introduced to me earlier in my career, and it's really been a big inspiration to me in terms of how I'm a data-driven marketer and how I've worked together with sales teams. So I'm really excited to have Aaron on and for him to be able to show people what his view on things are at the moment. There's myself, Andy. So I'm the CMO here at Leadfeeder. We've been doing weekly webinars now over the past couple of weeks. So people that have been on for the past couple of weeks have probably got to know who I am. But let's go through what we're going to be focusing on today. So I'll just bring people through really quickly in terms of what we've seen from Leadfeeder side. So what's been our reaction to the current situation, and how have we pivoted or changed how we're doing things in order to address it. Aaron will then go into, what's his view on things currently and what are the ways forward. And then we'll probably have 15 or 20 minutes towards the end where we'll have an open floor where people can ask some questions. I've seen there that Dara just shared in the comments box there, or in the chat box, mentioning that any questions, please, if you could put them into the questions tab, you'll see it there on the right hand side of your screen. That would be great. And at the end, what we can do is we can try to get through as many of those questions as possible. So just in terms of what we've seen from Leadfeeder's side, I think the reaction has had to be both from the marketing and sales org, and it's had to be together. So I've been doing a fair bit of research on this over the past week and just seeing what people are posting about on LinkedIn and whatnot. When people are talking about account-based marketing at the moment, it's been really interesting to see how the account-based marketing approach has really enabled people to pivot quickly, but also at the same time, it's really helped sales and marketing organizations come together to be able to hammer down the same message, rather than sales reacting one way and marketing reacting another, and then not really meeting each other in the middle. So from a sales or from a perspective from our side of Leadfeeder, what I can say is that the sales team and the marketing team have been working very closely together to react to the current situation at hand, and sales being very reliant on the marketing team in terms of content, and marketing being very reliant on sales from a feedback perspective in terms of what they need in order to start engaging with people that are already in a pipeline or in the sales pipeline versus completely net new stuff. So the marketing and sales team have had to really react together and work together to make sure that we're actually hitting home with our message. So I see it, the way that we've done it is in 3 steps. So we've reviewed our buyer personas, or the things that are already open pipeline. So has the buyer changed, or has the person within that company changed in terms of who we need to be convincing that our product is a right fit? The second part is that what's the prospect situation? So in the existing pipeline, for example, or even new pipeline, what's going on in their world right now, whether it be personal or whether it be professional? What are the things that are problematic to them right now, and how can we change that? Like, how can we go ahead and focus on one of those issues that they may have, and help them out with it? And I'll bring you through some things now in terms of what we're doing to help that. So from marketing's reaction, I want to just focus on the 2 different departments. Like my initial reaction, if we look here around March 16th time, that was the week when Trump had announced that there would be changes in the US. So I think it was around March 12th, March 13th, when there was travel restrictions announced. And within that sort of weekend, so 14th, 15th, I'd been speaking with a couple of people about, okay, what type of reaction are you seeing in your marketing numbers at the moment? And I had anticipated that things will go down slightly. So the corresponding week starting March 16th there, we can see that, this is the lead gen numbers for Leadfeeder here, and I'm starting to see things go down a little bit. And with that, I know that, hey, our sales team are going to struggle probably in the next 6 weeks if our numbers start going down now. It's a lagging thing because we have a sales cycle of maybe 45 days or so. So I started thinking, okay, how can marketing react to help the sales org to make sure that their pipeline isn't dropping? Okay, so the first thing is I start speaking with people. They say, okay, what are the things that I can do with potential partners to make sure that we're still engaging with people and enabling the sales team to engage with people? So what we've started to do is create sales fuel. Okay, so what does sales fuel actually mean? It's very focused content, which is enabling the sales team to reach out to people that are either in an existing buying cycle, that they're already in a pipeline opportunity with, or they're completely net new. So Aaron will bring you through some of the net new stuff that he sees being very worthwhile at the moment now in a couple of moments. But things that you should be giving your sales team in order to start reaching out should be things like webinars, like what we're doing right now. So we've done 3 webinars in 3 weeks. Our last webinar before now was around Christmas time last year, but now we're rolling them out on a weekly basis because we see that people are hungry for the information and hungry for content. Blogs, we started to really blog about things that we're seeing of issues to people that we're doing outreach towards. Now, it's not necessarily keeping our product on top of in the main message that we're pushing out to people. So one thing would be, for example, how to get better or how to react in terms of paid marketing at the moment. So what are we doing from a Leadfeeder perspective from our paid marketing efforts, which could help our prospects? Now, that's not necessarily 100% directly linked back to our product, but it's a helpful piece of information to people that are currently going through the same thing as we are. Okay, so ABM workshops. An additional thing that we've done on top is invited people off the back of webinars like this. And if people are interested, please let us know afterwards. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if they would be interested in participating in an ABM workshop. Again, this is together with Alex Ollie from ReachDesk, who's a customer of ours. But it's not a focus on Leadfeeder product. It's a focus on how can you shift the momentum slightly towards your favor by implementing some easy ABM steps right now. And a small part of that is Leadfeeder. But the overall piece is more to help people learn and create value for people through teaching. So from a sales perspective, I've mentioned it a couple of times. You've got your net new, so things that you're doing cold outreach towards, and then you've got your existing. So your existing is your pipeline that was created pre this COVID-19 crisis. And there's a couple of different approaches that we've been doing based on whether somebody's net new versus existing. So for a net new perspective, and I can only speak for Leadfeeder here, but what we've seen is if you can pivot to industries that are less affected, you will be more successful. So from our perspective, we started thinking, hey, what can our outbound team be looking at that, people are still willing to put their hand in their pocket right now because, for example, they do need to be recognized in the companies that are visiting their site, in addition to the ones that that are already in our pipeline right now. So things like video communications are still booming right now. So Zoom, for example. E-learning, pharma companies, they're the type of companies that it's not business as usual, but they're less affected than others, and you'll find it easier to break down the door and actually manage to have a connect or a meaningful conversation with. Some of the environmental opportunities. So based on the current situation, does your USP open up any new doors? So from our perspective, there is one particular interesting use case that we're seeing right now is around events. So salespeople would typically between March, April, and May have a full events calendar. So they would be going to a lot of offline events and creating pipeline via those events. Now, at least for H1 2020, so up until the end of June, it's going to go on longer. We're certain of it. There won't be any offline physical events globally. So that leaves another opportunity for us to look at, okay, how can we build further pipeline? And one of the messages we're pushing at the moment is really look at your first party data. So you can recognize your first party data via Leadfeeder. So i.e. understand which companies are visiting your website that are not converting perhaps, so you haven't recognized them through your marketing automation platform or form fills. See what they're interacting with and maybe score them, and then based off of that, do your cold outreach. On top of that, like one of the most important things, and I can't stress this enough, is reacting very quickly and immediately to the world around you. So things are changing almost daily right now. From our perspective, we can see different trends happening in different markets, and we're having to jump and chop and change things like daily. From my perspective in the marketing team, the guys are, they're flat out doing different things, and it seems like we're jumping around quite a bit. But at the end of the day, we actually are managing to get good results out of things because we're chopping and changing. It's a little bit whirlwind, but at the end of the day, it is making a difference. So a couple of tips that we've seen from our side. So one of the things that we got last Thursday across from somebody that we were speaking with in Denmark was that in Denmark in particular, there was some government subsidies being given to companies that were appearing to not be, I think, sending emails via their work network. I think it's something to do with if employees, I guess it's to do with the furloughed stuff. So a lot of companies would be looking to maybe cut back on their staff, but at the same time use the government subsidies and try to keep people involved within the workforce. So it's important to bear in mind what's happening in each different country and what are the changing regulations, because every country is doing things a little bit slightly different. And in this case here, we can see that by reaching out to this person via email, they would get very little to no response, but focus on another channel such as LinkedIn or maybe pick up the phone would work better there. Events. So there's a big opportunity now, and I've mentioned events a couple of minutes ago. SaaS Stock, for example, is an event which was supposed to be happening for 3,000 to 5,000 people in San Francisco in June of this year, one of the largest events in SaaS. And Alex, who's the CEO and founder of SaaS Stock, actually pulled the event probably 3 weeks ago and said it just announced there last week that they'll be moving it to a digital event. Okay, so my thinking on digital events pre this COVID-19 crisis was that digital events were a bit naff and they weren't great. They were basically like a glorified Zoom meeting, right? Now, however, vendors haven't had the chance or haven't had the choice but to make sure that these events are successful. So does that mean for the technology vendors, the guys that are offering the experience for the event themselves, they've had to up their game. So I'm super interested to see how these digital events are gonna play out. I would suggest to any sales team or any marketing team that they should invest in at least 1 to 2 of these events in the coming months, and attack this event like you would any other event. So make sure that you're getting meetings booked prior, make sure that your follow-up is solid, and making sure that you're getting meetings completed during the event. So there are a number of different tips and tricks in which people have used to drive people to a booth or to drive meeting numbers at a booth at normal events. I've done it before with SDR teams or sales teams. This shouldn't change just because it's digital, but maybe things will be slightly different. So it's important now that we start trying to rewrite that playbook in terms of driving meetings and confirmed meetings and completed meetings at these events in order for us to grow this pipeline. Another example that that came across my desk actually on Friday before we first did this webinar was like, actually, funnily enough, I'm not getting too many cold emails or cold calls at the moment. I've had a couple of bad cold emails, but very few cold calls. And this was one cold call that actually lasted for about 30 seconds and I agreed to a meeting, okay? And the reason why it was so good to me, and my apologies here for my handwriting, it looks like a doctor wrote it with his foot, but so is first of all, if we read through it, we are helping Albacross and Lead Forensics get in front of target customers at this difficult time, okay? So 2 things in there relevant to me because they've mentioned 2 competitors in the first sentence as soon as I picked up the phone. Hi, Andy, we're helping Albacross and Lead Forensics, okay? So I'm automatically listening. First of all, that person's done their homework. They know exactly who our main competitors are, okay? They've recognized the situation. They know it's a difficult time, but they haven't gone into too much detail because I'm a bit sick and tired of hearing about it, to be honest, and I think everybody else is, right? They've also, said, again, towards the end of it, let me show you how we're helping Kickfire, and another competitor of ours, create pipeline at the minute. So creating pipeline, obviously to most people, and we're not alone in this, is a pain point for everybody at the moment. So I'm listening. They've already mentioned 3 of our main competitors, and also then addressed one of our pain points. And that conversation lasted 30 seconds, and there's a meeting booked in the calendar for tomorrow. So it's about being relevant. It's about doing your homework and making sure that you're presenting the right information, and that's exactly what this person did. So from an existing pipeline perspective, I've mentioned this already, is what's the challenges that they face. So you need to look at their business and see, hey, is there anywhere within that business that's really struggling right now where you or somebody else on your team can offer assistance? So as an example, we've been saying to our sales team, hey, if people need help with their marketing, all you need to do is ask. If there's problems with budgets, for example, and paid marketing, what are some of the things that we're doing that we're seeing working? We're more than happy to help, and more than happy to reach out to our existing customer base as well as existing pipeline to let them know, hey, maybe we can be of assistance here. Okay. Second part is, and again, this is about doing your homework. What's happening in their industry right now? So what are competitors doing that perhaps the company that you're doing your prospecting towards isn't doing? And how can you help them actually achieve what their competitors are doing? And again, this reacting immediately thing is very, very important. So again, I can't emphasize enough from our side is this marketing help to support the sales fuel. So if your marketing team are sitting on their hands right now and not supporting sales with meaningful content and empathetic content, which they can push out to their existing pipeline, then they're doing something wrong. So you need to sit on top of your marketing team and make sure they're doing that. And some of the channels that we see are working pretty well at the moment are interesting, right? So we're seeing things like WhatsApp and Facebook working. And Aaron mentioned this the other day. These work well after an initial follow-up, for sure. So this is mainly within an existing pipeline. So people that you've already created some form of connection with. So things like WhatsApp and Facebook are typically channels that are private channels. People don't particularly like being contacted on them. However, at the moment, things are a little bit different for everybody, right? People are working from home, first and foremost. They're probably juggling how they manage their day with their partner. For example, if they have kids, people are taking 2 to 3 hour time slots. They're working at funny times. So at all times during the day, though, people have this on them. They have their phone on them. And these are the channels that people are using. And what we started to see good interactions on are just those channels. So SMS, Facebook, WhatsApp. Again, LinkedIn is a very good channel. LinkedIn at the moment, from what I can see, is getting a little bit crowded, but it still is a performing channel. And one thing that's working from an email perspective that we're seeing as well is videos within email. So using things like Vidyard, for example, and doing a screen record of that person's website and some tips in terms of what you can help with or what you can offer. And also, that doesn't mean to say that cold email isn't working. Cold email is working as long as you put the right information in there. So just before I hand over to Aaron, I think the most important thing from my side is making sure that we create lasting connections, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're going the extra mile with them. And I've had this conversation a number of times even today, is that if anybody says at the moment that they're not busy, they're doing something wrong. And with that, I'll hand you over to Aaron.
What if I'm not busy?
You're doing something wrong, mate. You've got 9 kids, mate. You're definitely.
Yeah, I said what if. I'm definitely busy, but the question is with what. All right, let me just do a quick check. I know there's some questions that came through. I think in the end we'll kind of save them for that, unless there's something super relevant, which I didn't see at that point. I know Hannah had a good question, but I think Andy answered around like which channels are working. Just there's the big 3: phone, email, LinkedIn. And then there's a lot of others, right? You could even include direct mail and carrier pigeon and door-to-door. Those are the big 3. WhatsApp and text message are still there. But again, the main things, as Ashley Hannah said, telephone, email, LinkedIn are still the go-tos. That is still the main place to go. That's still it, unless you have a special market. Like if you were selling to, if you're a place where the customers are on Instagram, which in B2B, sometimes, like if you sold to restaurants, which is probably not a great service right now, a lot of them are on Instagram. So Still the exception. All right, well, let's just talk about outbound in 2020. And I think the main thing is if you actually have a program right now, and if we could run a poll, what I would ask is how many of you either are dedicated prospectors or, there's a dedicated prospecting team at your company versus how many are doing it part-time because you're like a solopreneur or you're a salesperson who has to do your own prospecting. So we're going to start with if there's actually a team. So for example, if you actually have quotas and things around outbound, and actually some salespeople do, you kind of have to be prepared to throw those away. Maybe. I mean, you could be at a segment where the COVID's really helping your business and maybe the quotas go up, right? I'm sure it's happening in some places, Zoom. But for a lot of companies, there's really companies that hit the wall. Unfortunately, there's a lot of companies kind of in this middle ground, like, what's happening? We don't really know. And for those companies, you can't use last month's quotas, unless you have them, hold them with a very light hand. And you might have to get into this place of if things aren't clicking for you the way they were, which for most people they're not, we don't know how long that's going to last. It could be a month, unlikely. It could be 2 years. No one knows. So I think it's be prepared to have like a week by week evaluation of what did we accomplish, what were we able to do this week with results as well as kind of lessons learned. Let's reset a plan for next week. Just take it week by week. Right? And assessments, there's a lot of this gauge around executives being nervous, like, hey, we want an answer. Like, how are you going to generate pipeline? And like everyone's scared. You could say nervous, but everyone's scared because there's a lot of companies and jobs at risk and egos at risk. But the thing is, you can't predict. There's no predictability right now. The only thing you can predict is that we don't know. The only thing you can predict is that it's unpredictable. It will be this year. So I think scenario planning, what if things go well, the same or worse, not forecasting. Forecasts are going to be ridiculous. So here's just some samples of like all the stuff going on with outbound. So I have this EMEA outbound or WhatsApp group, and about a few weeks ago, again, no one was picking up the phone, right? As Andy said, there's this time when everything started to go down, probably near the end of March, I mean late March, and everyone at their offices were just no one picking up the phone. But then a couple weeks later, everyone's at home and people are picking up the phone, right? I got a note from someone that country by country, they're kind of doubling down in one place like Sweden and scaling back in others like the Netherlands and UK based on their business. And Sweden has been approaching the coronavirus differently. So kind of like slowing down to really look at case by case, what are we doing? Where should we spend our time and how do we approach that target? I've heard from a lot of people, LinkedIn's performing better than ever. I mean, more people are online, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Netflix, on whatever. So you got to figure social channels. There's just more activity. I don't have data, but I assume it's true. It makes sense. I'm on it more. And again, I think the whole point is no one knows what's going to happen. At some point, there'll be a new normal. We don't know when. We don't know what it'll be like. It won't be the same. It might be 5% more virtual. It might be 25% more virtual. No one knows. So we'll just have to wait and see. And like day by day, week by week, just kind of get through it. Now, besides kind of throwing away your old expectations on what should be happening, if you've ever heard of or read the book, Who Moved My Cheese, this is that perfect time for that book. Other step is looking at, we say, nailing a niche, nailing your niche if you're in the States. And this is the whole section from the Impossible to Inevitable book. And that book, I did that book with Jason Lemkin. It was a sequel to Predictable Revenue. And the reason the first part of it was it's called Nailing a Niche, and I'll explain it if it's unfamiliar. This was the most common challenge for companies trying to grow and struggling. And I learned this because after working with so many outbound teams, and when they struggled, the most common problem was this one, nailing a niche. What does that mean? It really just means knowing who your ideal customer is, which could have changed the last few weeks. And some people could be changing as you go. What do they care about? What's their pain? Again, that could have changed. And then what's your proposed solution and message? What are you offering them that interests them in a conversation? So where to begin with? Kind of got to go back to the beginning, right? Because all this could have changed the last few weeks. Maybe, maybe not. You don't know, right? And then look at, for the companies that we've got and who we have sold to first, who needs us the most right now versus when are we a nice to have? And if they need us, like, what do they need us for? Like, just going back to the beginning, kind of reviewing and testing this. So there's a company called I might not even be able to pronounce it, TrikeRes, here in Edinburgh, which I moved from Los Angeles to Edinburgh here in early January, and actually really happy to have been here. We have 6 kids here, 3 in Los Angeles, which is kind of like a mess in Los Angeles we hear. But here in Edinburgh, met a really wonderful woman named Rebecca Bonington, and she's this consultant. She's done growth consulting, and she was asking, hey, well, what do I do? Like, where do I start? And I think, well, okay, growth consulting is very broad. So what kinds of, give me some specific examples of like projects and things you do for people. Because growth consulting or growth helping is just too general, too broad, too many areas. So, well, okay, one of the things, like a specialty of mine is board development. I was like, got it. You know what? That makes total sense. And in fact, I actually know someone who's developing their board right now. I'm going to make an introduction. So it's an example. It's just one example because there's a lot of ways you can go through this. And in fact, I'll throw in the chat. You can get a whole chapter with exercises on this topic. But it's one example of kind of rethinking who our customers are, what do they need, how can we offer them a solution, and also make it specific enough that it makes it easier for them to see how we can be of value to them. Right? Think of yourself as a radio station. Most of us, and by the way, as humans, okay, our nature is to kind of do more, and I'm completely guilty of this. If you're a radio station and you're like, well, we do opera and jazz and hip hop and rock, right? You end up confusing customers, your listeners. First, you say, you know, we are the rock station. You broadcast that clear signal, right? That's the idea. Is like, what are you the best at? What's your specialty? And in these times, you kind of need to go back and triple down on that to be even more specific, to cut through the noise and paralysis in a more finely sliced way, make it easier for people to say yes. So this is probably the most important part too of like adapting, or one of the key ones, is just rethinking who should you be approaching. Now, part of the idea of nailing a niche is messaging. Again, who needs you the most? What's their problem? What are you going to say to them to get them interested? And I think that there's this other bigger trend around information overload, and I'm calling this it's the beginning of the end of copycat success. And by copycat success, what I mean is it's easier than ever because there's infinite information, content's a commodity basically, to go copy someone's approach because everyone publishes it. Okay, there's an email template that's working for a bunch of people. I'll copy that, I'll paste it, I'll send it, I'll try it. And you know what? Great. But because information is starting to spread faster and faster, as it will, then you get kind of the tragedy of the commons effect, which means the more successful a technique is, the more it gets around, the less successful it would be. Jeremy Donovan's an SVP at SalesLoft, and he put this great note out on LinkedIn. Basically says he's just getting so many emails now that all sound exactly the same. It's like a template, and that means he just tunes them out. Right? When everyone is zigging, you got to zag. So again, it's just rethinking what's our messaging. And as part of this, more than ever, it's the need for people to develop as a person, as a team, as a company, your own voice and style. So copycat, when you're a copycat, and then you know what? Everyone does in some way. Like as humans, you can't create everything all the time. It's just draining. So you got to kind of pick your battles. When am I going to learn and imitate from someone? Like on Amazon. Just think if you didn't have the review system, and not that it's perfect, but do you know how draining it would be to go through all the products and kind of try to evaluate them and sort them out. So it's incredibly efficient to copy other people until everyone else is doing the same thing, and then it doesn't work. So we're getting to that point, and there's always parts in the markets where this is happening. but this is going to be a growing trend in outbound especially, which is how to counter this. How do you find your own voice and style as a person, as a team, as a company, right? And I think you can always think of companies that have that, like they just stand out with their brand, whether, yeah, okay, maybe it's Apple or Steve Jobs, right? He had a style, he had a way he did it. And in email or LinkedIn or the phone call, there's all ways that people stand out in the way they write, the style of their words, the sound of their voice, the pictures. So there's all kinds of ways that you can stand out when you start to create yourself and to practice your own way of speaking or writing, really communicating. And a lot of people don't have the courage because it's hard to do that, because you don't get to that unless you do a lot of practice and what doesn't work. Books are a perfect example. You know, I have a book agent, my uncle's a book agent. He said, everyone's got a book in them and most of them should stay there. And but why is that? It's because everyone focuses on kind of like their story and they don't practice to write the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of words it takes of like usually kind of crummy writing to get to the point where they have their voice and it starts to kind of tune and clarify into something that really resonates with a reader. People, and I'm right there with you in a lot of ways. I've done business books. I've been struggling lately. I'm like, I kind of want to write some fiction stuff. And I'm really struggling from, I mean, you could call it whether it's time. And by the way, yeah, I got lots of kids. I got a business, all kinds of things. But really, it's usually kind of like a lack of two things. Lack of, what do you call it? Courage or perfectionism or self-criticism. That's there, and just it's not a habit. Right? And we all have these challenges. So part of this is if you are reaching out to people as a person, whatever that means. Again, it could be with a video, it could be the way you write. There's so many ways that you can reach out to people and connect with them. Right? Whether it's just the way you speak, visuals, doesn't have to be visuals, could be. Like if you have ever been on my newsletter, it's been a while since I've done it, or get emails, I like to write all my emails in lowercase, just like to. And people respond to people, right? So here's like a simple tip. Like imagine you're talking, if you're gonna write an email, or maybe even you're gonna do a video, you imagine you're talking to someone at a cafe. You kind of want to get out of like the writing style. You want to imagine communicating to a person, or maybe you're writing a letter to a specific friend or specific person, like one person. Because this is an old copywriting trick. It really kind of like tunes you into what you're trying to say to a person. Because what you find just with people, when you start to kind of write to no one, you just get this gobbledygook, right? So what feels good to them? What would you want to say or write to them? And then how do you want to create it in a way that feels good to you? For a lot of people, you might love doing video. And by the way, I've been actually doing a lot more video on LinkedIn, different reasons. But some of you hate video and you're more comfortable with the phone or email or something else, right? So you got to find a way that you think it's going to feel good to them and there's some value, but it also works for you. And there's so many ways today to communicate that way. And you just got to do it. So if you're going to write personal emails, try it 10 times a day. I mean, you could do it one time a day. It's better than zero, but it takes practice. And most people hate the idea that it takes practice. I'm right there with you. I mean, I want to be great at playing the guitar. It's not going to happen unless I practice, and I don't. There's a lot of reasons for it. It doesn't matter. So it's hard. I wish in this case, some other tangible ways. Maybe I could try to dig up some of my old emails from 10 years ago to current ones, trying to find some more illustrations of style. I don't have in this moment. I know it's incredibly important and more than ever. So I'm going to go back to the messaging examples. Given all that, there's some things that aren't going to change at all. If you're doing a message, whatever this is, right? It could be email, phone, LinkedIn, it should be short, easy to read, easy to understand, easy to act on. Because if it takes a lot of energy for me to figure out whatever you're sending me, video, doesn't matter what it is, I'm just going to ignore it and not act on it. So that's not going to change. In fact, that's going to be more important than ever, the more content there is. And some other tips and tricks to develop this is, again, still you can use the cafe example, but then once you create the thing, let's say just stick to email or LinkedIn, right? Written stuff. Okay, write it down, read it out loud. That helps you catch funny funny things in your writing. Send it to your phone. Okay, is it legible on your phone? Send it to a Gmail account and see if their little auto responses, work for it. Right, so you can test it. And then in terms of structures, I'm just going to give you a couple examples. Right here, we call this the classic. Classic is 3 parts. And again, there's so many varieties of this. And if you Google cold email templates online, you can get a million things. But basically, you have kind of a bridge, which is like an introduction, kind of like, why are you reaching out to you at this time? There's could be so many reasons, right? I saw we went to school together. I saw your company announced this. So it's basically why you're reaching out to me now. The second is value. What do you have to offer that's relevant and useful to them? Andy had a great example. Even just mentioning that they're helping competitors could be it. It's something to catch their attention that you can kind of be relevant to a problem they've got. And the third is call to action. So there's a lot of ways you can move this, but this is a really simple structure. Whether you're sending, honestly, this could be anything you send. It could be an email to your CEO. It could be an email to a prospect. It could be a LinkedIn message so whatever you're doing, this is a really simple structure. This is a good one to remember. And I think we're sharing the recording, so I'm not going to go through and read this. I think the key is if you're not used to doing this, your emails you write will be too long, they will be too wordy, and they'll be confusing. So don't get a teammate to review this. Get someone who's outside your company to take a look at it and see if it doesn't make sense to them. Chances are it won't. And then get on the phone with them, talk about it. So how can I better explain this so it makes sense? So it's simple. Okay. I should write that reminder so that the rule, don't ask your friends and family for feedback or your teammates for feedback is a rule in the Impossible book, but I think I should put it in here because it's another just great tip. This other version is the classic referral. Hey, hoping you can help me. Looking for the person responsible for something, finance, billing. Right? Super simple. Again, a lot of times the direct email won't work. Sometimes it will. A lot of times this won't work. Sometimes it will. There's no single technique that works all the time. So you want to kind of try some different approaches for your market to see what's going to work. This one, less opportunity to wordsmith and find a voice. However, again, if you find you're asking for things like who's in charge of marketing, then it's going to be too broad. So you want to, again, be as specific as possible to make it as easy as possible for the person to receive this to say, oh, I know who that is, and I'll forward this on because you don't seem like a scammer. So there's some testing going on, our company and others around coronavirus, and this is changing literally week by week. So again, no one knows what's happening week by week. Some messaging that was happening a few weeks ago is working, then it starts. So this is just some current stuff. Whether you want to try it or not, like for some of you just should use regular emails without any mention of what's going on, and others might make sense to try this. It's kind of like diet books and food books, right? There's a million food or diet books, and probably none of them will work for you. But if you read a few and you kind of adapt the ideas and you try them for yourself, you'll find a system that works for you just by finding your own way. This one, in my line of work, it's not uncommon to get the cold shoulder. Understandably, I'm finding that people's inboxes are a little more busy than usual with everyone working remotely. I'll try one more time. Then your little value statement. It's basically kind of having a new bridge. Would you be interested in learning more? Right. I mean, you can try call to action like, are you free Thursday at 3? People have more time. There's different calls to action. The point is the call to action too needs to be a clear, kind of yes or no. What you don't want to ask is, what do you think? That's about, because what do I do with that? Just another version. It might be hard to consider new investments or vendor relationships. Stuck at home, might as well reach out. This one's a little bit more like, hey, I just want to find out what you're dealing with there. So I do think a lot of people, a lot of vendors are in an interesting position because if you work with multiple clients or customers, you're in a unique position where you get to see what's working and not working for all those customers. And it gives you the position of being able to say, oh, okay, for this industry or marketing or finance, you can go back and teach them something because again, you see more across more companies. A sample LinkedIn connection request. Let's talk about LinkedIn. Again, LinkedIn is a little bit different, but not super different. So I think what we see work best on LinkedIn, and predictablerevenue.com builds and manages outbound prospecting teams, outbound sales teams for companies. And we do a lot of LinkedIn, a lot of email, a lot of phone. This one, simple, like, hey, you just want to connect to share ideas, basically. Okay. And then if the connection request works, you could follow up with basically another simple one. Hey, would you like to talk a certain time to share ideas, or conversion, but you're more of an information sharing approach. And in-mails don't work as well. It's just connection requests and then a message. Ultimately, I like, you can't go wrong with the back to basics, right? And if you are someone who's prospecting part-time, this would be perfect for you. And I mentioned Rebecca from TriQuest, the growth consultant who had a subspecialty in board development as an example. And really all you can do is, I know this works, I've talked to people who do it, is just like, who's my ideal client? Go on LinkedIn or someplace to find a mutual connection, and then ask them for a referral, and then do it again. And it could be as simple as this one, like, hey, Jacqueline, I see you know Bob or Tom at some company. Would you mind helping me, please, with an introduction to them? And yeah, you might need to add like one sentence, one or two about what you do. Maybe, maybe not, depends on how well they know you. But right, it's that simple. Ask for help. People are still in a state of wanting to help others. At a minimum, they should respond back to you and say, yeah, I'd be happy to. Can you include something? Like if they want to add something, they should maybe tell you, but it's better just to try it. So just to wrap up this section before we get to the Q&A, I think that a lot of this is practice. And there's a lot of people who are freaked out. When people get freaked out, they tend to get like possessive, right? What do I need? And it's a great time to practice generosity and kindness and sharing and helping, whether it's for your family, for your customers, and for your team. And so how can you help people without expecting to be paid or get something back? If you can take that mindset, and again, I'll be the first one to say, you do need to, like, people who sell should ask for the close, which in other words, it's easy to spend all your time helping others and you don't help yourself. But in this case, with all the drama going on, how can you help others without expectation? I really liked Andy's approach of like going the extra mile. You know, who out there that you're in touch with, again, your team, your family, your customers or communities are struggling. How can you help them? There's so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and really people just want a bit of a lifeline to get through that day, like day by day. So any ideas that you can share with them to help them, like feel like they've got some clarity, or like a light at the end of the tunnel, or even like a step, is always a progress. And as well, after that, make sure you invest in yourself, right? What are you doing to take care of yourself, your own personal finances, and your own creativity? We're in this interesting time where, because of this global effect, there's more change, it means more opportunity than ever. And everyone's at home. So there's more time than ever to create something, or to take something you've got and actually do something with it, whether it's a business, personal project, or hobby. And I totally believe that when you're investing in yourself to feel better and be more creative, that'll translate, whether it's to all the areas of your life. So just a reminder too, is like, it's all this is going on. Going back to your voice, when you think about sharing ideas and helping people, it's easy to hold back, being embarrassed about one thing or the other, right? Especially today, there's lots of embarrassing things going on. People losing jobs, money, titles, companies. So just a reminder that your successes do make you credible, right? That's what people like to talk about on LinkedIn. But our failures make us human, right? Relatable. Feel like, hey, we're connecting. Our interests make us interesting. Our dreams make us inspiring. And we've got all of these. These are all places you can tap into towards what you want to create for yourself and help your communities with, and to develop your voice. Especially, again, while we'll look back, and this will be seen as one of a transformative time for the world and the economies. Everything is kind of changing. Everything's restructuring. And that means there's a tremendous amount of creation and entrepreneurialism that's happening now that we may not realize or appreciate for 6 months or 6 years, but it's happening. So kind of like take care of your business, like your money and your food and your family and such. But then practice like creating, like whether it's your voice in cold emails, whatever it is you need to do. I mean, I've actually been spending a little more time like drawing and did some writing, kind of non-work stuff, because that's just where I feel drawn to right now. All right. So we got a few minutes for some Q&A. And in fact, I don't know if Andy, there's some questions in the question area that we want to start with first.
There are, yeah. So thanks for that, Aaron. That was super interesting. And yeah, I really like the creativity piece at the end. I think as a marketer, you know, this is initially why I got into marketing, was because of the creativity side of things. And then obviously I became very numbers focused and driven there. But I think these times offer a real opportunity to everybody, I think. And you mentioned about the entrepreneurial spirit, like, you know, you need to be creative. And as I said before, like if you're not busy right now, you're doing something wrong. So it's about focusing on the right things, of course, but you need to react. And I think that creativity piece is something that if you have that in you right now, you'll come out much brighter at the end of this. That's for sure.
True. Yep. It'll help you get through that day. All right. So a lot of people just, if you can get through the one day to the next, that's a win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go to the floor for questions. I know that Dara just posted into the chat there that if anybody has any questions, please like put them into the questions. Either we have some in the chat, but please, I'm going to go through the questions tab here. Just go through a couple here. So Bob has asked, have win rates increased because weaker prospects are not wasting their time?
Yeah, no, but everyone else is slowing down on their decisions.
Yeah, so I agree with Aaron there. I think, you know, I don't think anybody's weaker or stronger. I think, you know, I think everybody's the thing about this current situation, that everybody's in it. I don't think there's anybody that's not in it. Some are in it heavier than others, but I think it's a time where win rates, depending on your business model, depending on your sales cycle, will vary. But I think it's everybody across the globe is going to be slower now to make a decision. That's for sure. You know,
it's a fair assumption.
Yeah. Another one from Eric here was LinkedIn introductions. He's trying to solve the problem that most people hardly know connections. So if you're asking for them to do an introduction, you know, how would you do that? Like, so he'd usually ask, how well do you know XYZ? And that normally takes a bit of time because, you know, you don't know all of your connections. Do you have any suggestions on that, Eric?
Yeah, well, I know you can at least go out and typically add more connections, even if you don't know there's not. So even if you connect with people out there who looks interesting and relevant to you, you may not know them well, but at least you're connected. Is better than nothing. And then honestly, at that point, if you're connected to them on LinkedIn or some other place, even asking for a favor, you know, a lot of people get in the space of wanting to help. If you sound like you're a regular person and not, you know, hardcore salesperson and not scammy or spammy, chances are they'll pass you on and help you in some other way. So all you can do is ask, but I think most people, again, are in this place of wanting to help others, and you're more likely than ever to get them to pass you on. So just work on sort of describing what you do in that case. If you don't know that, if they don't know you, you would want to put a sentence or two about kind of like why, and just try to make it as simple and relevant to the destination as possible. So don't ask, again, go back, don't ask your team for advice, get someone who you know who's outside your industry to help you de-jargonize it.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now in our current situation, I think it's a good time to start creating connections. So a lot of the stuff that I spoke about was, you know, creating value for people. So if you manage to get that good alignment between marketing and sales, if you're in a sales role, so whoever asked that question there, it's after drop, or Eric, if you're in a sales role right now, I would suggest, you know, speaking with your marketing team and see what content's coming down the line, and see, you know, if you're making a connection with somebody, try to add a little bit of value on top, not in a salesy way, but, you know, try to offer out an olive branch to be able to try to create that connection. Because
by the way,
go on,
yeah, no, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I was going to answer a different question, so I jumped the gun.
Oh, that's okay.
Right.
So yeah, go on ahead, Aaron.
David has a great question. We sell to luxury hotels and restaurants, and it's a challenge to go after prospects without being insensitive, out of touch. Should we wait before we're going after prospects? So there's two questions here. One is, in terms of company pivot, is there any way, like if restaurants don't come back for a few months, how can you survive? And even when they come back, they're going to be struggling, right? It's not like everything's going to switch back on to the way it was 2 months ago. So first, do you have a plan? Does the company have a plan to survive? That might be out of your zone, but I would not hold back from going after. You're not going after them. So here's the thing: they're not going to buy anything right now, and that's okay. What I would do, I would reach out to them to start conversations and kind of build a relationship, which is go along, see those along the same lines of, hey, do you want to talk about what's going on with your industry and what we're seeing in other parts of it? Like we're in touch with other hotels, kind of this lines of, we're just talking to people and sharing ideas of what's happening, and what people are learning and not, what's working, what's not, if anything. So start off with more of that information exchange and do it from a place of honesty. And just remember, they're not going to buy anything right now. And that's okay. Like airlines are not going to buy anything right now. Hotels, restaurants, there's all these industries that have just been hit the wall. But you should at least start a relationship and see if you can help them. Even just have a conversation. And you have this advantage of being able to talk to multiple hotels and kind of gauge what's happening, and then go back and to each one and say, hey, here's what we're hearing from everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I think
I don't expect much revenue out of it yet.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's, again, it's about, I wouldn't hold back, but I wouldn't go in too salesy. See where you can help out, try to add value. I mean, I think that's all you can really do right now. It's your back's against the wall.
Once you said you got to have at least 9 months of cash runway.
For sure. Okay, so there's another question around the LinkedIn automation tool. I'm not sure. What do you think of LinkedIn automation tool? Yulia, could you maybe just be more specific, or Aaron, do you understand that question well?
Like, is there one, or what do you think of LinkedIn? So there's a few out there. The thing is, I think a lot of them, LinkedIn, I don't believe likes them, and so they often get shut down.
Yeah.
I think you don't have to have an automation tool to start. I think if you're going to start just doing it one by one manually, and then if that works and you're seeing some traction, look at some tools. I used a tool for a while called Linked Helper. I liked it. At our company, we use one called Expandy. So we've tried some others. There's a lot out there, but I think I would start manually. I'm just a big fan of doing things first with your, by hand. And once you sort of like, oh, this is working, then find some tool to speed it up. But don't start from the tool from day one.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there on most things, actually. I'd try to get the process working correctly first, and then try to scale it using a tool rather than vice versa. You can go and spend a lot of money and time researching tools and then investing in tools, and then end up with something that you can't use properly because you haven't built it on good foundations. So and just to re-emphasize on Aaron's point there, I think LinkedIn don't particularly like those automation tools in terms of like automated ways of creating connections on LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is good. So their own product, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, is a good tool to use.
Yep. Let's do one more. We're coming up on the hour, and I gotta.
Okay, so there's one here just around what sort of content is most appealing to current home workers who are flitting between many things: articles, white papers, hints and tips, any videos, ebooks, etc. What do you think, Aaron?
For content for home workers, like in terms of channels?
So just general content. People working from home at the moment. What's the best content for them to digest?
Oh yeah, here we go. Rebecca's question.
Yeah.
We're all home workers, so I think like what's most appealing to you? Everyone's a bit different. Like I like articles. I actually don't really like videos because I'm just much a reader. I feel like I can just scan something and get it very quickly, unless it's something you really need to see. So white papers, I'm not, videos, ebooks. I know I've been posting more on LinkedIn with video, short ones, but I think this is an example where you can be successful at any technique, and your customers generally will be across such a spectrum and be absorbing through all kinds of techniques. So it's not about what's the best channel. It's like what sort of content is the one that you feel the most confident to create and enjoy creating. And there'll be people out there who will resonate with it. Right? If you just are uncomfortable in video, don't do video. If you're a writer, do writing. If you do art, do art. So it's like finding your own way that you can create with the most confidence is where I would start. And this thing, people like bite-sized chunks for now. Kind of like they want to see some stuff. Hey, is this worth my time? Okay, it's like a sample article or something sample. Then sure, if it's a bigger piece, then I'll go for the bigger thing. So like smaller steps.
I agree. I think one of the things that we're seeing working very well, and I'll finish up on this, is webinars. So webinars is as this one here, for example, like the initial one that we pushed out last week got nearly 2,000 registrations within 4 days, without very much money put behind it. When I say without, it was probably about $200 or $300, and that was just testing out a couple of different channels. So I think, so as long as the content offers some value, as Aaron mentioned, the medium is not irrelevant, but I think it really doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly.
Because this is the world of there's something for everyone. If you want to sing Lord of the Rings songs into your WhatsApp channel, I'm sure there's people out there who would love to hear that, because you got the whole world out there now. So what do you want to do? I'm a writer. I think at heart I have been, and now I'm a speaker, and I would like to also go back to art. So I think there's the things that you have been confident in and you can do. Like at first I was a writer, and then I did lots of speaking, and now I'm a speaker, and I can be an artist again and kind of like a fiction writer. I'm not there yet. So like, where have you had the best success in creating, and what kind do you want to get to? And then that's the practice part. So I got to hop off. I want to say first, thank you, Andy and Leadfeeder. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone here who's been on the call. I hope this was helpful. One last thought is, I know there's a lot of potential drama between spouses, families, teammates, customers, contracts. Just remember that what's really going to get people through this is working together and building trust, not trying to enforce unenforceable prior contracts, conditions, or expectations. Kind of like, where are you today? Like, what's going to be the thing that helps that person or company? How can you, because if we all just help each other together to get through this, it'll be a lot easier. Not easy, but at least easier.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll end it. So thank you so much, guys, for attending. And as Aaron mentioned early on, we will be sending out a recording directly after this. And if you have any questions at all, please just reach out on LinkedIn. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.